Flushing the toilet is sort of a fire and forget thing. I mean, who cares what happens next, right? Well, if some really smart people over thousands of years hadn't taken the question of what happens next very seriously, the world would be a very different, very deadly, and way more disgusting place. Chances are you live in a household where you can just go to the bathroom, have a seat, and take your time scrolling Reddit while your body does its business. Relaxing, no? That said, going to the bathroom before bathrooms were a thing wasn't that bad either. Think about it. You may not have had Instagram, but you did have the entire planet to work with. The issue of human waste disposal didn't really exist before towns and settlements were a thing. 10,000 years ago, there just weren't enough people around for the question of, what am I supposed to do with all this crap to be a real problem? Your bathroom was wherever you wanted it to be. Beautiful, verdant, serene. But as populations became more concentrated, ancient communities discovered they had a low tolerance for other people's BS, or PS, I guess would be the more accurate term. We're talking about poop, and quite frankly, we're running out of synonyms here. In the Mesopotamian city of Babylon around 4000 BC, the answer to the poo-poo problem was pretty simple: a cesspit. That's a deep enough hole to collect and hold a community's waste, transported from homes via clay pipes with the help of bucketfuls of water. The ancient Greeks, particularly the Minoans from the island of Crete, were said to have used similar systems. So yeah, plumbing is really that old. In Scotland, houses at Skara Brae, occupied between 3200 to 2500 BC, actually had what's believed to be indoor latrines.
How do you know that's a toilet and not a storage space?
Well, there's actually a drain underneath it, and actually they did find poo.
Around 2500 BC, Mohenjo-Daro, located in present-day Pakistan, had buildings with true latrines connected to a sophisticated system of drains, and some societies had pretty clever ideas about where this water should drain to. Now, from what we know about the ancient world, people treated dirty water as a resource, not just refuse. Instead of just wasting their wastewater, they recycled it. Another practice that's similar to what we do today with gray water for environmental reasons. Bronze Age farmers and early river civilizations like those in Egypt, the Indus Valley, and Mesopotamia channeled wastewater to aquaculture systems and fields. They were presumably using moisture and nutrients in the water to keep crops alive during dry seasons. In cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, archaeological finds show brick-lined covered drains beneath streets. Bathrooms and latrines in many houses discharged wastewater into a municipal network fitted with access covers and sumps. Essentially, the urban plumbing that kept filth off their streets also made it possible to divert gray water for irrigation. Now, just so we're clear, this is what we would consider black water today. Most common gray water is from washing machines. But the principle is the reusing of water, just so we're clear. Between 250 and 600 AD, Mayan engineers in the city of Palenque, modern-day Mexico, devised a pressurized aqueduct by narrowing an underground conduit. Archaeologists speculate that besides possibly powering a fountain, the generated pressure could have also helped with gray water disposal or reuse. This water system is said to be the earliest known example of engineered water pressure in the New World. The Cloaca Maxima, Rome's great sewer, served as a monumental drainage canal from the center of Rome to the Tiber River. It was constructed way back in the 6th century BC. Later on, it was roofed with stone vaults and tied into a growing network of conduits that served public baths and multi-seat latrines, ultimately reaching a staggering 1,600 meters in length. That's almost a mile.
Well, after you?
After me? You are such a country bumpkin, Sextus. This is Rome. We have communal toilets. We all go together.
The benefits of this public works project were massive. The sewer unlocked central building sites for markets, temples, courts, and roads, concentrating people and commerce into closer, cleaner spaces. It was equal parts strategic and sanitary. By shunting filth into a controlled outfall, the system reduced stagnant pools that bred disease-carrying mosquitoes and disgusting street runoffs. The Cloaca Maxima also carried symbolic weight. Romans treated it as a quasi-sacred civic asset, a fact evident in the public resources devoted to its inspection, repair, and extension over the years. It even became a fixture in their literature, artworks, and currency, with historians and artists chronicling its significance in Roman society. But human development doesn't go non-stop in a straight line. Every once in a while, all that hard work just goes right down the toilet. After the fall of Rome, medieval Europe didn't seem to want anything to do with pioneering wastewater management systems. Many towns handled waste with bare-bones methods: open gutters along lanes, backyard cesspits, or just straight-up chucking poop into the streets. Excavations in medieval neighborhoods show thick bands of household refuse and latrine sludge, with pits cut alarmingly close to wells that people drank from. The waters became contaminated and advancement in sewage stagnated. Archaeologists have documented repeated cycles of digging, lining, use, overflow, and abandonment of crude systems over hundreds of years. So what did society do? Allow us to introduce the night soil men, Victorian England's cesspit cleaning professionals who became essential workers as the Industrial Revolution swelled city populations in the 1800s. Also, so we're clear, it's just a catchy name. That's not soil. So don't. Households hired pit emptiers only when cesspools overflowed or threatened to collapse, and the work was irregular and incomplete. Walls leaked, bottoms silted, and fresh waste quickly refilled the voids. Written accounts of night soil collection illustrate why such systems never provided real containment. Even where carts removed solid human waste, seepage, spills, and illicit dumping guaranteed that a lot of human feces still reached streets and waterways. The Romans had a system. Now we're just doing it by hand. Public health consequences were predictable for crowded towns and cities. Frequent bouts of gastrointestinal disease, periodic mass mortality from epidemic infections.
He says he's not dead.
Yes, he is.
I'm not. He isn't?
Well, he will be soon. He's very ill.
I'm getting better. No, you're not. You'll be stone dead in a moment.
And a truly terrible stench that officials tried, and largely failed, to mitigate with various fines and edicts. This became the norm for Victorian-era hygiene for a while. During the summer of 1858, thanks to intense heat, human waste that had been making its way into the River Thames for years cooked up into what Londoners christened the Great Stink. But it didn't just smell disgusting. Cholera and typhoid cases rose sharply too. Decades of rapid population growth, alongside worsening air pollution and poor wastewater management, had already brought the city dangerously close to drowning in the stench of human filth. The introduction of flushing toilets in households, and the increased water pressure that came with them, pushed it past the limit.
I went to the bathroom.
I went to the bathroom as well.
I went numbers 2 through 7.
In response to the crisis, civil engineer Joseph Bazalgette had a proposal: long interceptor sewers on each bank to capture the city's local drains and carry the combined flow away from central intake points. Massive underground brick tunnels, pumping stations at Abbey Mills and Crossness, and new riverside embankments formed an integrated system. And all that moved millions of liters of household wastewater daily toward outfalls downstream, where the tides could disperse it until treatment works were added. While it would take almost 2 decades to complete, the project's effects were quickly felt. After completion of the core network, the smell faded away from the Thames. Cholera all but vanished from London, with the exception of one final localized outbreak in 1866. While Bazalgette's innovation helped solve London's central cholera crisis, it didn't solve the problem of actually disposing of waste. The new system gathered sewage and sent it east to be dumped on the outgoing tide, moving all the stench and contamination to the Thames estuary, which obviously went over pretty well with the people living near it. Things got especially bad in September 1878. That's when the pleasure steamer SS Princess Alice sank near the outfalls at Galleon's Reach, right after millions of gallons of effluent, which is the technical term for poop water, had been discharged at that very location. Approximately 650 passengers and crew floundered and drowned in the sewage-laden waters. Public pressure pushed London toward establishing a working scheme of wastewater treatment. Large settling and chemical precipitation tanks were added near the main pumping stations, so solids could be separated rather than flushed straight into the Thames. Sludge vessels hauled it to sea for disposal, while the clarified liquid fraction still flowed to the river. This gradually evolved into more modern treatment works, and although the practice of sludge boat dumping supposedly continued until the final decade of the 20th century, UK laws did eventually ban it. On the other side of the 19th century globe, many American towns employed a similar night soil system of dealing with human waste. Loads that weren't spread on fields were dumped at piers or straight into rivers, where waste settled into harbor slips. It was periodically dredged back out just so boats could actually use said harbors. One of the most significant sewage milestones in the United States took place in Chicago. After a deadly cholera outbreak in 1854, engineers launched a city reshaping plan to literally hoist buildings and roads, then lay sewer pipes in the newly created space underneath to carry the flow to the Chicago River. At the time, this may have seemed like a great solution, but all that untreated wastewater eventually threatened to contaminate the population's drinking supply. And you know what contaminated drinking water leads to? That's right, our old friend and Oregon Trail superstar, dysentery. Plus, Chicago's drifting filth became the problem of other cities downstream, which necessitated the addition of wastewater treatment as a step in the process. In 1890, the first sewage treatment plant to use chemical precipitation opened in Worcester, Massachusetts. By the early 20th century, cities were layering treatment onto their conveyance systems, resulting in dramatic declines in typhoid and other waterborne illnesses, and establishing the template for modern wastewater management across the United States. But enough of this crap. Let's talk activated sludge. Essentially, it's a wastewater treatment process that uses aeration and a microbial floc, a clumped mass of microbes suspended in a liquid, to separate waste from water. The settled solid contaminants, the sludge, can then be recycled to help treat the next batch of sewage. The approach was first discovered by UK-based engineers Edward Arden and W.T. Lockett in 1913, and the results were published the next year. Activated sludge cuts sewage treatment times from days to hours by accelerating the oxidation of organic material, and early trials showed it could be operated continuously with a return sludge loop. The timing was just right too, as cities in Europe and the United States were just beginning to establish sewage systems as more effective alternatives to cesspits and night soil men. And UK utilities rapidly adopted the method. Within a few years, plants in North America and other parts of Europe followed, establishing activated sludge as the core of secondary treatment, rather than simply sending untreated human waste to a river. Over the years, the process has been refined, and it's still in use today. In the US, the construction of municipal sewer systems was in full swing near the turn of the 20th century. But the building boom that took place after World War II meant that the newly built homes for returning soldiers were unable to connect to these sewers. Instead, to keep up with the breakneck pace of construction, these homes came with septic tanks or wells. While this kind of setup works for rural communities, the limited spaces that these homes were built on introduced the risk of groundwater contamination. Not to mention that upgrading septic tanks entailed hefty costs.
When this toilet is flushed, it runs. And when you have a septic tank that's nearly full and a toilet that's been running all night, then you could have a hell of a problem.
Not to get too technical, but a septic tank releases the wastewater into a drain field, and that should keep the water levels to where it won't back up into the house. Today, there are 3 basic types of collection systems used for removal of wastewater and stormwater in urban American homes. Sanitary collection systems that carry wastewater to treatment plants, stormwater collection systems, which are mainly a flood prevention measure, and combined wastewater and stormwater collection systems, which serve some 40 million people in 32 states. The global adoption of modern sewer systems didn't just make it easier to flush away human waste. Some of the world's most dangerous infectious diseases were sent down the drain too. One 2020 study found a link between dollars invested in water and sewer infrastructure and sizable declines in typhoid transmission. Other studies have found that in Germany, the decline in overall death rates between 1877 and 1913 can be directly attributed to improvements in both water supply and sewerage. And the mortality rates in Paris sank in the same period, also thanks to homes and businesses being connected to modern sewers. So, have we reached our happy ending? Well, not really. 1.5 billion people across the world still have no access to private toilets or latrines, and over 400 million people have no other option other than to defecate straight into street gutters or bodies of water. Consequently, a large fraction of household wastewater is still discharged without safe treatment. Poor sanitation is linked to the transmission of cholera, typhoid, and other infectious diseases. These problems of the past are still with us today, so the next time you hit the head, be thankful for all the work that went into making your morning so simple.